Welcome to the Expand Your Experiences podcast. I'm your host, Rashawn Stevenson. This is a show where I deconstruct experiences and how they help us develop into the best version of ourselves. I'll be facilitating conversations discussing the frameworks and experiences that help shape our lives. Enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Expand Your Experiences podcast. First of all, I want to say welcome to any first-time listeners. Thanks for stopping by. And if you've been someone who supported the show before, and this isn't your first time listening, I really appreciate your support as well. It's been tremendous. Today's conversation is a really good one between me and a gentleman that I like to call a lifetime learner. A quote that I found that I wanted to use for this show to introduce him is, "Never stop learning because life never stops teaching." If you know me, you know I spend a lot of times in cafes, and Justin is somebody that I met at a cafe quite some time ago, and we became instant friends, which seems to be a common theme about some of my guests so far. Nevertheless, this is a conversation that I really enjoyed, and I think you'll enjoy it too. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Dr. Just Love Wilson. Expand Your Experiences podcast. Today is a very, very exciting day for me because I got my friend Justin, Dr. Just Love Wilson, as my guest today.
Woo!
Nah, it's super cool, man, because Justin is somebody who really, from day one, has encouraged me to do a podcast. He's been like my number one supporter and encourager, if encourager is a word. And I'm pretty sure, being that he's a professor, he'll correct me if it's not a word, but he's been the person encouraging me for a long time to get this started, man. So I'm excited to have you on the show.
Yes, thank you. Welcome. I'm glad to be here. And what's really cool is that you actually are doing it. So I guess this is awesome. How many years has it been since we talked about you doing this podcast?
Shit, man. I think it was at least 4, 5, right?
5 years?
Maybe more than that.
Yes.
But I think timing, I think I was building, and I think timing, I think I have enough. And to be honest, man, it's a lot about your courage, you know what I'm saying? And not really, and being willing to set aside the fear of anything and just going for it.
I think that's true because, when we met years ago, I was writing a book. They're saying, "Oh, I'm working on this book." And it was just like life started happening, and it delayed. And now it's like the book is pretty much almost done. Right?
Well, I want to talk about the book, but I don't want to start. I don't want to start with the book. So here's where I want to start.
Go ahead.
First of all, as I mentioned, we don't just call him Dr. Justin Wilson for nothing. He actually is a Ph.D. anatomist, physiologist, currently at the University of Xavier in Louisiana. And for the non-science people listening, can you tell us what is an anatomist and a physiologist?
Sure. So basically, I studied how the body works and what are the components of the body. So I teach professional students, which are pharmacy students, and physician assistants / associate students in the area of anatomy and physiology. So I basically teach them structure and function. So you're in the service, you run, you exercise. In order to build those muscles, these students learn. In order for you to build the muscles, the students learn what those muscles are and how those muscles grow, right? And so that's for every area of the body. And so that's what I teach, and that's what I specialize in for my PhD.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's pretty interesting, man, because, when you see someone or you with your own body having that level of understanding, I'm sure it trips you out just knowing so much about the body and how the body works.
Well, I think for me, I've always been fascinated with the body, the human body. I think it's I don't know, all shapes, sizes, colors, all of it. It's just something that's always been intriguing to me. It's not a erotica thing, but it's just I really like the way how the body works. And I'm always questioning, like, so what does this do? What does that do? And I think that kind of got me into studying, which I would say, like, what is the mechanism of how this thing works, like the body? And so that's for me. I don't know. It's just fascinating. And even when I'm like, let's say, for example, I'm traveling in the city, I'm on a train, and I look over and I see somebody with a condition, like a kid that's autistic or someone that has like an involuntary movement, like tardive dyskinesia, like with their fingers. I'm like, oh, well, okay, I know what that is. But then I have to stop staring because I don't want someone to think I'm being rude.
Right.
You know?
Right. So let me ask you this. You're born and raised in Chicago.
Yes. Chi-town.
Chi-town. How would you say your upbringing contributed to your love for science?
I don't know. I always just gravitated to taking science courses in high school, grade school, the science fairs. I don't know. I was a curious kid. Like I always tried to build things, destroy stuff. It was just that the exposure that I got through the schools I went to. And then also I was part of like the YMCA, which there was this one program. I can't think of the name of it now, but my mentor at the time was Rick Mosley. And he was the one that was like, you're a gifted Black kid. You're going to go to college. He's like, you're not going to be like some of these other students. So it was like he was that person that really also exposed me more to science and to after school programming, Saturday programming that forced me to not get into the bad crowd, but to then go and pursue science. Or I don't know. It was cool. Like in the kitchen, taking baking soda and vinegar, which is a common thing kids do. But like I always was mixing stuff and trying to figure out what was it, what happened, things like that.
How does your parents play a role in your, like, did they encourage it? Did they let you experiment? Like how was what was their input?
They were like free spirited as it relates to if I wanted to do something, they said, okay, you can do it. But then there was levels to it where it's like, okay, enough is enough. Like I wanted to play music, so I started playing an instrument. Then I wanted to play another instrument, so they allowed me to play another instrument. Then I played another instrument, right? And then after the third instrument, it's like, okay, no more. So it's kind of like that with science. It's like, go ahead, you can do these programs, you can do them. But the other thing was like, they had to be a part of it. So it was like, okay, eventually you have to get your license, you drive yourself to go to these things. Because it was like, I was just really I don't know, the light bulb came on and I just was engaged with the science, like science and music. It was just my life, literally. I don't know what else. I mean, they didn't discourage it. They opened the door. They paid for the activities, and so I went.
I feel like you're one of those classic cases where you know what you're gonna be from a young age. You know what I'm saying? It's like just based on the things that you were doing, it kind of seems like science was the path for you in the beginning, at least.
Yes, but honestly, I laugh about it because there is an old picture of me as a kid. I don't know if it was like maybe Easter or something, and I have like a bow tie on and a sweater and a shirt, and I laugh because I saw that picture recently, and I said, "Oh my God, there's the young professor." Like so, literally, your path is predestined, right? Some of our paths are, right? Like I literally, when I look at that picture of me, like maybe 4 years old. It's the same picture of how the style of dress that I go when I go and lecture as a professor. And I'm just like, this is crazy. So, yes, I really do think that I was on a path that I didn't know that I was going to be on this path. The path was not perfect, but it is a path that opened up doors for me in the science and STEM arena. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. Everything is a combination of experiences. It's basically who you become. It's just a combination of all the things that you've experienced prior to that moment.
Yeah, but you have to remember, I don't know if I've shared this with this saying to you years ago when we met, there are no wasted experiences. Like there was a reason why we met, that day in that coffee shop. Like there are no wasted experiences. So I look at all of it, like even, yeah, like there are no wasted experiences.
So let's fast forward to that. What do you recall about the day we met at that coffee shop?
I was sitting at the, I'm not gonna say the name of the coffee shop, but I was sitting at a coffee shop by the window, and I think I was facing where people come in to order, and you were walking by, or I guess after you ordered, and you had like either the Maryland flag or University of Maryland, College Park or something like that that was on your sweatshirt. And I was just like, oh, is he from Maryland? Or you go to University of Maryland? And I think I may have asked you that question. It was totally random. And then from there, you were like, oh, no, I live in Baltimore, but I'm from Virginia. And you sat down across from me at the table while you were waiting for your coffee. And we sat there for like 4 hours, like bananas, 4 hours.
Bananas. No, it was just like that. And I remember walking away from that conversation feeling very enriched. Because I think one of the things about you, as well as I appreciate engaging conversations. And I think that day we met, I mean, we talked about everything under the sun. It was almost like we've known each other because you were asking me things and I was asking you things. We were talking about projects we were working on. We were talking about goals. We were talking about coffee. We were talking about travel. It was just so much. And I think I knew that day that I gained a new friend and that we'd be friends forever. And here we are, what, 7-8 years later?
Wow, has it been that long?
I feel like it has, because if I was in Maryland, it had to be because I was in Maryland from 13 to 17. So
yeah, so it was probably, yeah, you're right. You're right.
So one of the reasons that I think that you asked me that was obviously you had been in that area for college. You attended the Howard University, Ph.D. and undergrad. Some other names include the Real HU, the Hilltop, the Mecca.
Oh, Lord.
And what I found out also is that Howard is one of the most comprehensive schools in the nation and constant leader in STEM fields, is a top provider for Black undergraduates who go on later to earn doctoral degrees in science and engineering. So is that why you chose Howard for your undergrad and PhD?
Actually, no. I chose Howard because of a dream. I literally was slated to go to Morehouse College. Everything. I got accepted, I got a scholarship, and by a whim, I was like, oh, so I said, let's go visit Howard, right? And I remember I came to visit Howard during, I think it was George Bush's inauguration. And it was a young lady. She gave me a tour of Howard, and they had like a special tour just for me and one of my friends that came. And they showed us Howard, and I was like, oh my God, this is nice. Like, and the young lady was very nice. I think her name was Courtney. This was years ago. And I was just like, oh my God. So I met some of the professors, and it was just like, wow. So I go back to the drawing board when I come home. I drive all the way back to Chicago because I drove to DC just to go and visit. And so I told my parents, I was like, I really don't know where I want to go to school now. Like, I was always set on Morehouse. And so they said, just pray about it. Just go to sleep on it. And so when I went to sleep, in my dream, I saw a bison, right, which is Howard University's mascot. I said, well, you know what? I'm going to go to Howard. So literally, it was a dream that shifted my whole trajectory to go to Howard University.
I mean, that's probably one of the most interesting dreams that I've ever heard. Do you remember anything else about the dream other than just being a bison? Because that's insane.
No, I don't remember it now. I probably have to sit down and go back because I have something written down in notes because of the other project I'm working on. But I don't remember all of it like as of now. But I do have like a little journal that's from years ago. But yeah, it was literally a dream that shifted that trajectory.
So let's talk about your experience at Howard. I mean, you're walking on the grounds of places of a school where Toni Morrison, Thurgood Marshall, Taraji P. Henson, Stokely Carmichael, Dr. Justin Wilson. These are all names from Howard University. What was that school experience like?
I think for me, it was a most amazing experience to see Black people that are bright and brilliant, top of their class, that are leaders in their communities. Like Howard University really did attract the brightest of the bunch. And like you went to school with some people whose parents were ambassadors, who were lawyers, doctors. I mean, like myself, I was a first generation student, right? But there were other students who were long legacy of Howard. And it was just an enriching experience because you literally, like, I took I want to say humanities course, right? And so it was called Individuals in Society, totally opposite of the STEM classes. But this professor really took, when you said Toni Morrison, took some of her works and made us read it that in a way that I've never read The Bluest Eye before. Like to see the different light motifs and to compare it to other things that were going on currently in the world. It was just like eye-opening. I've never experienced that kind of level of education before. And so I think for anyone that goes to Howard University, they really get all around education. It's an enlightenment. It is not that you're going to go and you're going to go work for somebody. It's literally it's opening you up to become a free thinker, to be free so that you can change the community, that you can meet other people and empower them. And like I look at that now, like as a university professor, like I literally am empowering students and unlocking that cage or that lock that's on them that think where they think they can't do a certain thing. Like I mean, I don't want to tell the students business, but there are people that have sat in front of me and cried because they did not realize that they had it. They had the ability that they were deserving to be in this particular program or to finish their degree. But it's like a place like Howard University just took the key and unlocked it and removed the boundaries, the inhibitions, so that you can be a free thinker. And it forced you to look at literature and look at science and look at the other different subjects and to be open. Like I took Spanish, and it's funny because I just went to Puerto Rico, not too long ago. And it's interesting how I learned Spanish then and how I was able to use it in Puerto Rico to order food, to meet people, to order drinks, to build a relationship and conversation and to network where these people, when they come to New Orleans, hey, I got you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Now that's super dope, first of all. Because I was just when I was, preparing for, our conversation, I don't know if this is still the motto or was the motto, whatever back then, but it said that truth or service was the motto. And I think everything about you says truth and service. I mean, everything about you that I know has always been around those two things. It's always been that you've always been super, super authentic. You've always been, truthful in everything that you do, and everything you do is for service. Like you've never ever talked about anything service related that didn't have anything to do with the enrichment of someone else's life, So I think that, based on, maybe your upbringing and your, college experiences, those are some of the things that you took on as your own personality.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of upbringing too, because like I'm sure like your grandmother may have said, treat the person, the CEO and the janitor the same.
Yep.
And I think that is a very important thing. Like even when you were going out and you used to date, right? You would look at how the woman would speak to the server, right, or the busser, and that's a strong indication of how she's going to treat you.
Definitely.
Right? So I think that's a thing that's always in the back of my head as a man. It's like, how am I treating people that can't serve me or do anything for me, right? And so you have to always operate in that way. I call it the servant leadership model. I think of it, but yeah.
So when you're talking to those students and you're literally seeing the light bulb go off in them, like, how does that make you feel? What does that make you feel like?
I think it's like the currency that, you don't see on your paycheck, but you see right here in your heart.
Mm.
Like, it's worth it. Because a lot of us are leaving education, like left and right. A lot of Black people who really need to be there, especially it's a shortage of Black men. And a lot of people are leaving, right, because of other reasons. But that's some of the things that make you want to stay, that it's worth it, that you reach at least one person. That if you could see that light bulb go on, it's like, wow, I got one, at least one out of the 125 students. I got one. And it's all about planting the seeds, my guy. Planting those seeds, because you never know. They may come back and say, because of you, I didn't commit suicide.
Mm.
Because of you, I decided to leave that relationship. Because of you, I decided to pick up and go and do this particular job, right? And these are things that I've had students come to tell me. Like when I was at another school, you saw me, right? And you stopped me from going home when I was about to commit suicide. Like those are things that are very heavy. And here I am, a science professor, interacting in I guess utilizing some of the other skill sets that I was able to hone in on as an undergrad, and that had a holistic education, right? To see the signs that someone is in distress and to say, hey, let's stop with the schoolwork. Let's talk about your soul. Let's get you some help, right? So I think that those are the things that when you look back on it, it's like, oh, those, you're making an impact, right? I'm making an impact. And I think that is very important, because it's all about serving. And we're not here to make just money and to live this glorious life or have fancy things. We're here to really to give, right? To give back and empower the next generation. And I think that is like one of my mottos that, that I've done. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, yeah, that's really something that even when we first met, it was all about service, actually. It was literally service.
Yeah, for sure. Because at the time you were professor at Hampton University in the biology department, and you alluded to this earlier. But at that time, you were working on a book. What
Yeah.
inspired you to write a book, and what and when can we expect the book? Because you know what I'm saying. Now I've officially got a podcast now, so I can now ask you like, where the book at? You know what I'm saying?
Where your book at? Man. So what's so interesting is the leitmotif is dream, right? Is the word dream. And I started writing this book. It's called $2,000 and a Dream, right? And it's literally the story of a young man who comes from a certain part of Chicago and then makes his way through and navigate, this thing called life to get to where he is now. And the book is pretty much done written right now, officially. And there are some edits that needs to be done. So hopefully sometime this year will be a release of the book. But it really just stemmed from, having the life that I grew up. It wasn't all roses, and I mean, it was very difficult, very different, and when you experience things like for yourself, like, I don't think you said you didn't live with your mom, right?
Right.
So you experience being raised by a different parent that's not your mother or your father. You have a skewed perception on life. You may have a skewed perception on relationships and things of that sort. And so once you begin to deal with those things and issues, right, you're able to navigate your life and your world differently. And I think that in this book, it really talks about those things that were kind of dark, but then it's coming out in a more light at the end, right? So from the tunnel through darkness and to have light, and it all is based on $2,000, like, which is the amount of money that I had to save in order to go to college, right? And a dream that dream started with that bison that I saw, and then what did it go to? Like all the ups, the downs, the sleeping in your car when you were in college, and I mean, it's the rite of passage that some of us have to take when you're first generation, right? That you don't have to, but unfortunately, I took it because I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I think the book is to just inspire and to encourage people who may feel left out, or that they maybe don't belong, the imposter syndrome that some of us may feel, that just remember why you have that dream, and everything works out. And as I stated a little bit earlier, there are no wasted experiences. So all of those different experiences that, I had as a kid, going to college, graduate school, they all prepared me to deal with the discrimination, the racism, the toxic work environments, the great work environments, the building and mending relationships, and the in families and things of that sort. So all of that is part of the story. And,
for sure.
Yeah.
And do you think that all of those things that you experienced also help prepare you for you being able to bounce around? Because since I've known you, you've lived in Cleveland, you've lived in Hampton, you live in New Orleans currently. And I think you're also transitioning soon again. So it's like, how do you think all of those experiences help you be able to navigate yourself in new cities and make new friends and find new cool places and things like that?
As I stated, there are no wasted experiences. And when you're in this particular field, you go where the jobs are, right? Because, there are contractual agreements and things of that sort. Or you go and also as a millennial, millennials don't really stay at jobs long term. They go to jobs where there are purpose and other different things, except for you as a person who's with the federal government. But it's almost like how you are in the Navy, right? Sometimes you have to go where the assignments are. Like you're in Japan now, and it's like we have to be adaptable. I think when you stop being adaptable and malleable, you die, right? Once you become so complacent, you die to whatever that young boy with the dream that was inside of you. And I think it's very important when you have the ability to travel, to see how other people live, do it, right? And it has been an enriching experience. And even though I've lived only within the United States, but I've traveled abroad, within the United States, even the South, the North, the Midwest, there's so many different ways of living. Like I live in the South right now, the deep, deep, dirty South in New Orleans. And people love New Orleans. They love the food. They love the culture. But you begin to see the ugly ills of slavery and the Civil War. That's a constant reminder here that as an outsider, I'm like, oh my God, these people are not upset. I'm like enraged. Let's talk about this.
Right.
Like, someone dropped the Confederate flag across the expressway not too long ago. And I said, this is a way of life for some down here, right? And in Virginia, where you live also, right? What is it? Jeff Davis is it Jeff Davis?
Jefferson Davis, yeah.
That was at the jail that was on Fort Monroe, Fort Monroe. So the ills of the original sin on America, is still here, and you see the disparity, right? And so even though I'm a professor, but I'm at a school that's really about social justice, you see the disparity in the educational system. You see the disparity in the income, and there's a lot of crime, right? So there's the hidden veil that they cover a lot of things. Even though it's an amazing city, I love the city, I love the people, but also you see things. It's like as an outsider, you're like, this is not normal, right? But if I never lived here, I would have never experienced that aspect.
Yes.
And on the positive side, I would have never experienced the aspect of people treating you like humans. What I mean by that is when I first moved here, I was in the grocery store and someone said, "Hey, love, you need anything?" And I looked. I said, "How do you know my name?" Because my name is Just Love. And she says, "Oh, no, baby." That's what she said. "Oh, no, baby. We call everybody Love here." And so it really opened me up to not being so uptight, as so structured. And like up north, you can't call a woman baby. You get in trouble for that. But here, men, women, everyone call each other baby. It's a term of endearment. And people smile at you. They say hello. They may not know who you are, but they'll say, "How you doing? How your mom and them? How your mom and
Mm-hmm.
them?"
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, and you're like, I'm like, my mom is dead. Like 'cause my parents are deceased. I'm like, what do you mean? And the guy said, no, 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 you're not from here. We're asking, how is your family? How are you
Mm-hmm.
doing? Right? So that's the blessing. That's the awesome thing about an area like a New Orleans, because people actually care. They want to know, how are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like that superficial stuff. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, I could go on and on and on and on.
I know, but it's like a complete different contrast from anywhere else. That's the
Yeah,
cool thing about it.
especially New Orleans.
Yeah.
Like the food, the food is none like no other. Like when I came to visit you in San Diego, right? The food in San Diego was so bland. I didn't tell you. It was like I ate it and I was like, what in the world of the cacosity was this? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Well, I mean, it's hard to compare New Orleans food to anywhere because, like you said, it not only does it have seasoning, but it got soul in it too. So
it has
I
so
think it got soul in it too. So I think that you know that's the thing you're probably gonna miss the most
yeah,
about being in that area.
it's like the ancestors are tapping on them. That's enough, my child.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
when they're seasoning.
yeah.
But I think the good thing is, honestly, my guy, is I know how to cook, so I can cook the food if I want it. But it's good to try other different things. Like I mean, I don't know, it's an amazing city for the arts, the music. I feel like it's a spiritual city.
Mm.
Like, and my ignorance before moving here was like, oh, it's all about voodoo. No, I mean, I think it's literally a spiritual city, because what came through the city were slaves originally, right? And sometimes when I'm in the French Quarter, whenever I do go, sometimes you just feel this presence, right? So whenever you're walking around, if you just become very in tune to just whatever's going on, it feels something. You feel something.
Well, the one time that I've been to New Orleans, and I agree. I remember getting there and feeling like this heaviness. It
Mhm.
wasn't. It didn't overwhelm me, but I just felt this heaviness of the city. It's something that I never. Well, I've only felt that feeling one other time in travel, and I think that was at Stonehenge in England.
Uh,
That had a really heavy feeling too. But the other place that I can remember having a super heavy feeling was New Orleans. So I don't know. I agree with what you said.
yeah, New Orleans, and then also for me when I went to what is it in South Carolina, Charleston.
Chucktown.
Yeah, I went to Charleston, and there was this marketplace, and I tried to cross to go in, and it was like something stopped me.
Mm.
I didn't know what it was, and I was like, why can't I go inside? Like, and it was a plaque, and then that I read the plaque, and I think it said something, this is where the slaves were sold. And then
Mm.
like it's just, I don't know. My body just seems to be in tune with certain things. I don't know. Like I'm not a metaphysicist or anything of that sort. I'm not into any of that. I don't even study it, so I could be totally wrong when it comes to speaking on it. But it's just, I don't know. You feel, even like some of my friends I've met, they just are. They're like family. It's like I've known them for years, kind of like how we met. Like we literally sat and I shared some things with you. You shared some things with me. There was no way for us to know any of that stuff about each other.
Right.
And that's kind of how it was, has been with some of my friends I've met here since I've been here for a few years.
Yeah. So one of the things that I find fascinating is we were talking about this a little bit before we recorded, is how a person with pretty much the highest degree of formal education like yourself can navigate through life and navigate through these situations and navigate through these experiences and always creating a way to be a student again, or to be a person who can learn something new? Because a lot of people get in these situations where, they think they know everything, and, they have education, they have experience, but they can't learn anything. It's like they're not experiencing anything new. How do you stay so grounded and create these learning experiences for yourself to make you always a student of life?
That's a really good question. And I think it goes back again. My belief is once you stop challenging yourself and you stop learning, that's when you become complacent, and that's when you go downhill. Even though I'm young, right? But I believe the PhD was the most humbling experience, one of the most humbling experiences in my life. Not the only one, but it's one of those experiences that broke you, like that broke me and like built you up. And you realize even though you may have this amount of education, you still don't know everything. And as you begin to study, and I think people on the outside who may not have, a terminal degree like that, they just think, oh, doctor, whether MD, PhD, or whatever, they think it's like here, which it is a very high degree. The PhD is the highest degree of the land. But anyone that truly has studied to earn their degree, they know a lot of stuff in a very minute area. And it also exposes what you don't know. And now that, especially as I'm embarking upon something very new with my career, I'm opening myself up to learning things that I never had a chance to learn because I've been so busy delving into a very small aspect of life, which was very important. Right. And I think this is a great time to, as I was sharing on another podcast recently, this is a great time to have a renaissance. Like if we think about 100 years ago, when the Harlem Renaissance came out of the other flu pandemic, we're coming out of a pandemic right now. So this is a wonderful opportunity for brilliant minds just like yourself to create, to learn, to stretch, to grow, so that we can build for that next generation, like for your kids, right?
Yep.
For all your kids, like you're doing this for your kids. They're seeing their dad being very creative and owning something, and they're going to be able to have a model, right? So that they won't have to go through the uphill battle to do what you have already done. You can just be like, hey, this is what I did. You need to do this and more, right?
Right.
You give them the blueprint. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the blueprint is important because here's something that I always think about in reference to my kids, and what we're talking about. They're going to have their own struggles. They're going to have their own things in their life, right? I just don't want to contribute to it. I want to be, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to contribute to that. What I want to do is be this beacon of light for them as they go through these experiences. They can come to me and I can help guide them and help them present them with the blueprint that help navigate through these challenges, not eradicate the challenges. I just want to be, because you can't, because no matter what, every human experiencing life is going to have challenges and they're going to have things that they got to overcome. So I don't want to rob them of that. Obviously, I don't want to encourage it either from things that I've done or haven't done. I just want to make it to where they can use my blueprint, see how I've navigated through this life, and use those tools to navigate through their lives.
That's good. That's good.
We talked a lot about science, man. And one of the things that, I know you're passionate about STEM. And I know when we met, you were in the process of working on something to give more people access to STEM. Is that something you're still currently passionate about or currently working on?
Well, yes. So that goes all the way back to the thing we were talking about, service. And so this is my way to give back, is to ultimately my life goal is to increase the pipeline of students entering into STEM. And so as I work with the particular company I am now, like it's literally increasing the number of students going into medical careers. And another thing that as I'm transitioning to is going to help to increase, hopefully, more students of color coming into health sciences as well. So it is like my life goal, and things I do on the side as well as a consultant is to help students realize that they can go to medical school, or they can go to dental school, or they can, go to these different programs. And I'm a resource that really help them because as I was talking with a student currently where I work now, the student confided in me and said that they felt like representation wasn't there, and they felt like they may not be able to do what they're in school for because they don't feel that they don't see enough of other people doing it. And it was just like, the comment was, I felt seen because of you. And it was like that moment that I was like, oh my God, like, this is like, I did not know that I was making this impact on this particular student, because I didn't know this student was going through all of that. And even though, environments are supposed to be inclusive because we're in this, Black Lives Matter, all these different things, there are still some students who are being pushed out and made to feel like they can't do like medicine or pharmacy or these different things. And so it's really good when you realize that you're making an impact, because, especially during this pandemic, we've been going, building, and really reflecting. And to get that kind of feedback is actually heartwarming. Like, it's like, oh, well, I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah, at least you reach one.
Because a lot of times you're just going through your life doing what you do. You always want to make an impact. You always want to be inspirational. But when the feedback loop is closed, it does feel good. It is gratifying in terms of knowing that you're doing something to make impact, or you're doing something to inspire someone. And
so, what about you? So how are you impacting and inspiring people, even in the current role that you have with the U.S. Navy?
Well, with the Navy, I think my bigger inspiration or impact comes outside of the Navy. But I'll put it like this. I always try to make sure that my cup is full, or my light is the brightest that it can be. And that's just what I do personally every single day. Right now, I'm not saying that it's always full. I'm not saying that it's always bright, but I'm always making it my intention to be that way. Right. It pours out in different aspects of my life. Right. For example, when I'm out capturing images, that is often inspirational to people. When I'm just doing whatever it is that I'm doing, when I'm collecting the experiences that I collect, I'm doing these things for me. I'm doing these things for me to keep my light bright and to keep my cup full. I think a byproduct is that it encourages other people to do the same thing. It encourages other people to think like, well, wait, man, I could be doing more, or I could be experiencing life. Like, because Sean is being himself in the most authentic way that he can be, and living his life in the most authentic way that he can. And I think that alone is inspirational. So I think it does carry over into Navy as well, just because people can come to me and they know that they're going to get, the truth. They know that they're good. Well, my perception of the truth, and they know they're going to get some type of encouragement, and they know they're going to get someone who genuinely cares about them and helping them navigate through whatever it is that they're trying to navigate through. So I think those are, does it answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, it does answer the question, but it makes me think of also, I don't know if you had this blog post years ago with your artwork of like the light, and you had different images of light. And so it just made me think of that, like being the light. That is true.
But even with that, right? My art is a reflection of me and my light. So it's like a lot of times what I see or what I capture or what I'm conveying through art is how I feel or what I'm noticing or something that I'm, not necessarily trying to make you notice, but for you to see it and then gain from it what you will. So
Mm.
I think it's a good reflection of usually where I am artistically based on what I'm conveying. And let me ask you, I mean, being a writer, do you feel that is also something prevalent in your writing style? Like you're writing about things or your observations or things that are you've internalized and now you're conveying them through the written form?
Yeah, but I think about this actually when I was saying you wrote a post, I actually wrote a blog post called "Be the Light." I think
Mm.
maybe both did.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very important. It does come off in my writing, in my blog posts, because it always has like a positive spin at the end of whatever I write to try to continue to encourage. And I remember now when I said "Be the Light," I remember that post because I took a picture of a light bulb when I was in Cleveland, and I edited and shifted the colors and all that stuff to mesh for that blog. It comes off in writing as it relates for creative writing. Scientific writing is very different. It's very regimented. It's I call it like the legalese of science. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's you can't really be flowery or like Ernest Hemingway when you're writing for science.
Mm-hmm.
You're writing for grants, you can do it a little bit that way. But for the creative writing, it's it's very different. It's open. I think it's open for me. It's less restrictions. It's actually the fun type of writing for me. So yeah.
So before we were recording,
Uh
you
oh. Uh oh. Uh oh.
here we go. Nah.
Yeah. What
But
we talking about? What aspect? Hold on. Can we talk about that on this? Lead to fifth.
yeah, no, man, you can't plead the fifth on this one. You made a statement and we were talking about living free, right? So I want you to, I mean, what does that mean to you, living free?
Living free for me started in 20 what is this 20 this is 2022, right? So
Yep.
2020 February 2021 I decided to live free, and I think I took my first plane trip during the pandemic to Florida, and then I came to visit you and your friend, right? And what I decided to do in February of 2021 was to every 21 days I'm going to have a break, whether it's a mental break, a physical break, travel somewhere. But every 21 days, I shut down. I shut down work. I shut down other people that I don't want to interact with. And I do the things that I want to do. And it could be sitting in a coffee shop journaling, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be like traveling, which I did travel during those times. But for me, living free or being free is, reclaiming my time. It's literally sitting in a coffee shop and reading a book, doing the things that bring and spark my joy, and also, like as you said, replenishing the light, Ligth, right? Or HT, Light. So replenishing the light. It's the coffee. It's my coffee. The first miracle that Jesus allegedly did took dirty water into wine.
Right on. Right on.
But no, that's for me literally doing the things that I want to do, like learning a new task. Like I have a bicycle. I'm in my home office right now, but I'm looking at my bicycle, like fixing a bike, like utilizing my hands, utilizing my senses, whether it's visual, smell, touch. I mean, just utilizing things that is outside of what I'm defined as Dr. Wilson or Dr. Just Love.
Mm.
Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's so important to just take time for that, and I think that also answers the question I asked you earlier about how you stay grounded and how you stay humble and how do you always stay a student, because you actually take time to know and learn and engage with yourself in that way. It's so important. I think it's important.
And I think it's grounding to actually go outside and put your feet in the grass and walk barefooted. Like, I'm not a tree hugger, but I really do believe that we need to go back to some very basic things. Like how you have your camera, you went and got a new camera and you're taking pictures all throughout Japan. I went and bought a camera during the pandemic and I started taking pictures of everything in New Orleans and how it was boarded up. So every day I would go out and I would take pictures. And then what I noticed was that people started making murals on the boarded up buildings. Right? Beautiful stuff. And then there were things that were dealing with the protests with George Floyd and all these things. And I captured these moments. And I said, here I am. And I keep showing this, like, I'm a scientist, type A. But in order to recharge, rejuvenate, I had to tap into the creativity aspect of life, of writing, photography, right? It's like being out in nature, walking barefoot. Like, it's just going fishing, like doing some really things that, you as a city boy, you really don't do. But like going fishing, going out on the Gulf of Mexico and catching red snapper, like that is not something that a city boy would do.
Right.
But it exposed, by coming here, I was exposed to learning how to rest and get a reset during a time that, a lot of people were probably losing their minds because it's so much uncertainty, right? And I decided to shut out social media, shut out the news. And another thing is I do not own a TV. There's not one TV in this house. And I do other things with my time instead of sitting in front of a TV.
And I think that's something that I've always admired about you as well. Because I remember when we met, one of the things we talked about in the 4-hour conversation was just how you lived a minimalist lifestyle. And the reason that you lived this minimalist lifestyle was because it allowed you to have room for the things that you found to be important. And from that conversation, I didn't necessarily become, I wouldn't say a minimalist, but I evaluated the things that I felt that I had in my life that weren't necessary. And since then, I've always tried to make sure that I don't have an excess of things or an excess of. I have a TV. I do have a TV.
There's nothing wrong with that. Now, come on now.
For sure. Nothing wrong with having a TV or watching shows all day if that's what you want to do. But I don't want to do that. Like, I have too many things that I want to do and that I'm working on to be distracted by that. And I feel the concept that you taught me was the more I say no to things that I don't want, the more I can say yes to the things that I do want. And I think that concept is wrapped around how I choose to spend my time. And that's something that I want to thank you for exposing me to back welcome. Some years ago.
You're welcome. I forgot about that whole minimalist conversation because we really did talk about that, because I think I had just watched The Minimalist, and I was like, I never heard of it, but I just knew that I was on this path of shedding, and because we were talking about relationships, I had went through a divorce and all that stuff, and I was just like shedding all this stuff, and I was like, I actually felt good that I did not have a lot of things, because it allowed me to be upward and mobile and to say, you know what, I'll take that job. Like, you know what, I'll go there. And people are like, why would you go to Cleveland? Like, oh my God, Cleveland. But Cleveland is a hidden gem.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an artistic person and you love a great craft cocktail or craft beers and things like that, and really good food. I mean, Cleveland has a lot that a lot of people will not know unless you go or live there.
Hmm.
Like, people were born in Cleveland, they love Cleveland, right? And you can't tell them anything different because they experience Cleveland in a way that outsiders probably would never know anything about it. They don't want outsiders to know because that would drive up the price once people start moving there,
Hmm.
right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's dope, man. And, I think your next endeavor is going to remind you a lot of Cleveland. So that's all I'll say while we're recording. But I think your next place you're really going to enjoy based on what you just mentioned about Cleveland.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for that, for the heads up.
Yeah,
Of
yeah. You already know, man. You got me as a resource. So
course. How are
um,
you? How are you adapting to Japan? Like, how is that life going from, San Diego, sunny, right, and just beautiful,
yeah.
to going to Japan? I'm sure Japan is beautiful based on your pictures.
Well, I similar to you. Um, I like when I like creating ways to reset and become a beginner again, right?
Mm,
You know, San Diego had became my comfort zone.
really?
Yeah, and I love San Diego. Like San Diego is somewhere that I can see myself living for a long time. But I learned the flow. I mean, I create ways to always never be complacent and super comfortable. But San Diego was a place that I had gotten accustomed to. So coming to Japan was like going to another planet. I
Mm,
mean, and still sometimes it's like living on another planet. But as far as me adjusting, because I've lived in so many different cities and I kind of know how to, go in and ground and meet people. Japan presented a challenge though, because the language barrier. So
mm,
usually I can just go to a cafe or whatever and and I would always meet people. So here it was a little bit challenging because instead of being able to communicate, not only was I living somewhere where it was like another planet, but I also couldn't really or still can't really communicate. I mean, I'm better, but it forced me to observe differently. And it forced me to have to communicate differently because now I can't just use language to communicate and I can't just use language to understand. So I have to engage my other senses in order to know what's going on, in order to connect. So that was the first thing I did to try to adjust. I just increased my observation, which also, played into my photography because now I'm super tapped in to the environment because I have to be able to navigate in this new world where you're
mm.
driving on a different side of the road, you're driving on a different side of the car, you can't read no signs, so now I'm in this space. But after almost a year of being here, I've learned how to navigate, but I'm still not comfortable, but I prefer not being comfortable because it allows me to have to
Bro.
be tapped in and it allows me the room to grow that when this experience is over, I will also be able to have collected this experience and then use that for the next stage of my life. So I feel like this is just I think everything, like you said, throughout the whole conversation, nothing is a wasted experience. So right now, I'm just being as present as I can in the experience and figuring out the ways to grow and figure out the ways to that this experience will help me in the future stages and future projects and future whatever it is that life in the universe has for me.
I think that's good. That's good. And even thinking about, when you go to a different country, just the customs. I mean, as an outsider who's traveled other places but never lived outside of the country, I'm just like, this is such an enriching experience.
Definitely.
Like even if they have like tea time or just, I don't know, like the meals that they have and the portion of their food. I mean, even probably like the freshness of their food is probably very different than how our food is here stateside. Like, because we have a lot of preservatives in our food. And even like, I can imagine their seats. Like if you go to a ball game, if they have a ball game, their seats are probably much smaller than our seats. And, just thinking about like just those customs that are very different. And it makes you also appreciative for America too.
It does. I mean, even with that being said, like, because I didn't even go into that, but that's a whole different thing because the customs and the culture, and we're just talking about, and the customs and the culture is something that I also had to adapt to, because one thing I don't want to ever do in any travel, going anywhere, is come across as an entitled American, because I think Americans, when they travel, usually are super entitled and
we call them ugly Americans.
Yeah. So to all my Japanese friends or friends from different parts of the world, not all Americans are entitled. So
no,
we're not. But that's the thing. Like even this morning prior to the call, I went for a bike ride, right? And this is just a small little courtesy thing that I've noticed. So when you're riding a bike and you have to cross the street and there's no light, if you see people see you, they'll stop and they'll allow you to cross the street, right?
Wow.
Not necessarily, that's not even the part, but the part is when you do cross the street and you're on a bike, it's courtesy for you to bow to one person and bow to the other person on the other side of the street. And this morning during my bike ride, I found myself doing it. Now, I didn't even think about it, but I know that usually when I let someone cross the street, that's what they do. So I found myself this morning crossing the street and, bowing, because, in the States, you might throw a peace sign up or just do a head nod or something like that. But, but today, and I might have done this before, but today I actually noticed that I did the same courtesy that happens here in the culture.
And that's good. I mean, I think that's good. Just like, living here in New Orleans, as I've been here for X amount of years, you begin to take on their cultural things and cultural norms. Like, and the other day I had called my family up north and I said, y'all, like, and they'll say, y'all, what is y'all? And I started laughing because, the plural is you or in singular is you as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason y'all is the thing that is used. And it's these little slogans or sayings and colloquialisms that I'm picking up living here, even though I'm not from here. But it's really interesting to see that how, as you stay in the area, we continue to grow, and become, not to totally assimilate, but to take on the culture, so that you're not so like sandpaper towards sandpaper with the people that you live with, right? You interact with. It's more of trying to have a happy marriage and to fit in, but still also be yourself.
Yes. Which was also a challenge for me when I first came, because, again, I knew I didn't want to be the entitled American, but then I realized, I was like, but you know what? I still got to figure out a way. I still got to be myself. And, and then I realized, you know what? It's not about what I wear. It's not about anything like that. It's about my energy, and it's about my vibe. And if my vibe and my energy is good, then I can just be me, because that's me. So, and that has worked for me being here. And I think that's something that you can take with you anywhere on the planet. If you are a good person and your vibration is good and you got good energy, people don't have to be able to speak your language, or you don't have to be able to speak theirs. They feel you. They feel that you're good people, and they're willing to help you out, and they're willing to conversate with you and connect with you and whatever.
That's dope.
So wrapping up here, man, we're gonna shift gears a little bit, and we're gonna ask some of the questions that I like to ask towards the end of the show. Um, and this would be interesting because I've never really asked you this, and so I'm curious as to what your answer is gonna be. But if you can pick two people in any time in history to have coffee with, who would it be and why?
Hmm. Hmm. That's a good question. It's very hard to say just two people. It's very hard. Oh my God. Ah, let's see. I wish I would have prepped for this question. um, I actually would like to meet my biological dad.
Mm,
Yes, because I've never met him. Because the person who I was told is my father, I just found out is not.
mm.
Based on my DNA test with Ancestry, I just found out. So I would love to meet my biological father, just to know, because this is like something that was a blow because I didn't know. That's
Hmm.
why people should not tell lies
Yeah,
because DNA doesn't lie, and so this
true.
is something very recently. So that's one, and then two. I actually want to meet Cornel West, to sit down with Cornel West. He seems to have a brilliant mind. And I know he wrote like Democracy Matters and things of that sort, but he he is a person that is like was a forefront individual as it relates for politics and the black empowerment. And I think he will be a phenomenal person to just learn from and to sit to have coffee. Like he
Hmm.
just to be like even from some of his books are for some are probably hard to read, but he is a dynamic speaker from what I've seen. But I want to pick his brain.
Mm.
You know, like I'm not sure if he's still in Princeton. I think he was a professor in Princeton, but he has a brilliant mind, and I think he's one person I would love to sit down and have coffee with.
Okay. What about if you could live in any time in history? What time or what era would you want to live in other than the current era?
The Harlem Renaissance era, as it goes back to that we were talking about earlier. Reason being is that was where the time when things were just being created, just like Renaissance. There was a rebirth, and the individuals are coming out. Of course, the swine. Not swine, I keep saying swine flu, but the Spanish flu, right? And it was something very similar to what we have or had, but it probably a little bit worse, probably back then. But it was the music, the literature, the poems, the just the empowerment. And the other thing that was really cool about that era was that when I lived in Cleveland, I learned about speakeasies, right?
Mm.
And I became very fond of like these very craft cocktails. So I want to like go in that era to dress like how they dressed and have come home from work and have like a sidecar or
Hmm.
a 75 and just I don't know, just have it and sit back and sip and to just think and to create. I think that would be the time. That would be the
Yeah.
time.
And the cool part about that is just then they had the big pans and you just go somewhere and you dress nice and you
Yeah,
just jam out. And
we don't dress anymore. I mean, from because we're on Zooms or whatever, like from here up, we're maybe dressed, but we don't dress anymore. Like I don't know when's the last time I put on a suit.
or we don't even have venues or really where you can go and it's kind of not like a concert but something where you just dress nice and it's just big band and that's why one day we're going to talk about creating our own atmosphere like that because I feel like that Renaissance era there are some lots of elements of that we can use in today's society for people like us.
But I think it's happening now, actually. To be honest, I really do think there's a renaissance that's occurring now. When you look at some of these other cities, I mean, I see like creative geniuses here in New Orleans are doing wonderful things. So the gentleman who just Will Smith just published a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the gentleman who did the cover is an artist here, a young man that's here in New Orleans. I mean, it's the culture that's influencing the world. Like I didn't think about this. So during the pandemic, I know we're about to finish up, but during the pandemic, someone wrote on a board outside of a big building here, the things that you love about New Orleans is because of Black people, right? So a lot of people travel to here for the cultural experiences, but I didn't even realize this, that the food, the recipes, they're from the people of the diaspora, right? And so when we look at a lot of things that are in the United States, they're literally based on certain aspects of the Great Migration. Like I'm sure, like if we look at K-pop, like some of the musical influences for K-pop,
Mm-hmm.
they look at R&B artists, right, or '90s artists that influenced the music back then, and they embellish off of that. And I'm just like, we are such a creative group of individuals. And here I am again, type A scientist that is tapping in on all of the creative sides now.
Yeah, no, and that's another thing that I notice here, like how far of a reach that the culture has, like how deep it goes. There have been so many times that I've been into a place where people didn't even speak English, but what we're listening to was the same thing that would be listening to in a
Yeah.
mall or a place in the States. Like it blows my mind. Or the
But
fashion. Like a
yes,
couple weeks ago, I saw these two. They look like teenage guys. They had velour suits on and Timberland boots. Now it was incredible to me because they were chilling, like they weren't even like, but they were chilling, and that's a part of the culture that for us was like, early 2000s. But the fact that these dudes can confidently walk around with velour suits on and Timberland boots. It just kind of goes to show that not only does the culture have reach, but there are certain aspects of the culture that will never die.
hmm everything we do, we influence the world. I mean, I even think about this as some of the things that I was told about fashion. And this is something we can look up later, but I'm not 100% sure. But a lot of the great fashion designers took some of their ideas from the continent of Africa,
Mm-hmm.
like Versace and some of these other big.
Fendi. I think I tapped in slightly to what you're talking about, but I want to dig a little bit more as well.
I said, oh my god, I just thought it was just so interesting. But we could go on and on
Yeah, yeah,
about how
yeah, yeah.
we influence everything. I mean, we literally do. But I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and I think the great thing is imitation is flattery. So the fact that you're in Japan and you're seeing things that they're wearing velour and all these things. I mean, that has to warm your heart that you're you're away from America right now, and you still can get a little piece of it to make you feel welcome in a foreign land too. So that's also another aspect that gives you some aspect. You have a certain level of familiarity where you're not completely like, I don't know anything here.
Right,
So there's a
right.
way to connect to those people. So if you went up to them and you tried to speak to them, you could be like, well, we had this in the '90s, like blah
Mm-hmm,
blah blah.
mm-hmm.
That gives you ability to have a talking point for something that is comfortable for you, to at least connect with them.
Well, one major thing that I've found um, to be a connection tool here is music, because I obviously love music, and I'll go to places and I'll be looking for vinyl, and I'll just get into a conversation with people there, or I'll go to places where they're playing vinyl or different types of music. And
Really?
oh yeah, now I will say that the culture of music here is incredible. Most of the people that I've connected with, it's been based on music. Like,
Mm,
I mean, even stuff that you would think, you know, people don't know, but they know just as much as I know about maybe for example 90s R&B, right?
Mm-hmm.
90s R&B, I could probably name 5 or 10 people that I know right now here in Japan that love 90s R&B and can name and sing along with every single word to SWV or Total or whatever the case is. It's crazy.
Well, it's not, because music is a universal language.
For sure.
Yeah, because if you play a major chord, it sounds happy. You play a minor chord, it sounds sad. And regardless of someone speaking Japanese, English, or whatever, you can hear and feel those chord progressions that will be moving to you, regardless. So I think that is awesome, man. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So it's needless to say that we're definitely gonna have to come back for a round 2, because we can go down rabbit holes on pretty much every aspect of this conversation.
Of course, we can talk about that music thing, and we can go to this New Orleans music, and we can talk about some music.
So we're gonna put a bookmark on it for that. But before we go, tell people where and how they can connect with you. Tell people where they can find you and engage with some of your work.
Sure. It's very simple. Anything that they want to find me on is Dr. Just Love. So Dr. Just Love. It can be www.drjustlove.com, or on my social media is DRJUSTLOVE.
Well, I can't just leave on that note. I got to leave on the note of, can you explain to the people, that is probably the dopest name ever, by the way. So I'm just curious as to, would you mind sharing, how that came about?
Well, it came about, my mom named me Justin Love Wilson. And so my family sometimes, like my godmother, they used to call me Just Love, Just Love, Just Love. And so since I am a doctor, I just decided to put Dr. Just Love. And after, unfortunately, my parents transitioned, I decided to start using my middle name. I never told anyone my middle name until I was 30. And so I decided to just start using Dr. Just Love. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Just Love, I really appreciate you taking the time out to have a conversation, share some of the things that you shared. I'm pretty sure, I know I'm always better for it. I know every time we talk about anything,
yes, sir.
I learn something and I grow. So I really appreciate it, sir.
Vice versa, sir. Yes, vice versa. Yeah.